You're so pretty. You're my favorite. You're my, hi. This is a loom knit hat. Isn't it pretty? It looks so much like my needle knit hat. I'm not even kidding. And I know that I made this on the knitting loom, and it's so pretty and shaped really well. Make this yourself, a decreased crown. No matter what hat you're working on, just work up to that length and then make this decreased crown right now in this video today, whether you use an adjustable loom or a non-adjustable loom. Welcome to GoodKnit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches. And I suggest some stitch markers. I've got one different one for peg 1 and then a handful of them for like maybe up to 12 depending upon the size of the loom for the crown or the top part of the hat when it reduces and goes inward. You're also going to need your loom. We're using a 3/8 gauge loom. So this one is a fixed round loom. This is from a series of 3 and you can use all 3 in this pattern from Knitting Board. It's a 3/8 gauge small gauge loom, 3/8 spacing from peg to peg. And this one is 64 peg. This is 64 pegs here on the all-in-one loom from Knitting Board, and you can do all 5 sizes on the all-in-one. Now, if you choose to do one that's fixed, then you won't be able to reduce it as much, but we do have notes on the pattern. Also, another loom that would be good is if you have the X-shaped loom, big X, and it is able to reduce down just like this all-in-one. There's a picture I'm going to pop up above to do it on there. With the all-in-one or even a kiss loom, you're going to want to be able to adjust these insides in down. So on the all-in-one, I put the bolt on the outside and move my sliders to the inside, and you'll see why later on in the pattern. Grab your supplies and get your pattern, and let's jump into all the details. It's going to be worked in the round. For right-handed knitters, you're going to work clockwise, and for left-handed knitters, you're going to work counterclockwise. All knit stitches are U-wrap to work nice and loosely if you're used to working really tight. This also talks about what I talked about, the fixed looms or the non-adjustable looms, so read that if you want more information. Then down here is where we're going to work the top of the hat. All right, so it looks like I'm ready to begin. Make sure and have this nearby you. You have knit to the proper length, and we're going to shape the top. Let's look at our pattern. We have a section for non-adjustable looms only, and then we have shape top. So once you've worked your pattern length, then if you have a non-adjustable loom, which is one of these round looms that you can't use the sliders and move in, then you're going to knit around for 1 inch. So you work for 1 inch and shape top. So you continue to shape top and working rounds 1 through 7 only. So 1 through 7 here is all you're going to do in shaping for your top. So you need this extra inch. And if you have an adjustable loom, like this one back here, the all-in-one, or one of the other adjustable looms on the market, you will do the shape top rounds 1 through 13. If you still want your pattern to be longer, do that before you start the shape top section. All right, so we're going to continue on the pattern. Be sure and work it your extra inch here or start here. To shape the top, you'll notice on the instructions that it says round 1 with A, knit 6, and then knit 2 together, repeat around. So that's every 8 stitches. So we want to take our extra stitch markers, which are different from our peg 1, and we're going to go ahead and place them at every 8th stitch. So I've kind of pulled this one so I can see it. It's 1 from the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to pick that stitch up and place my marker. And I'm going to go ahead and move my 7 to my 8 because this is where we're knitting 2 together. And the reason why I want to mark with this stitch marker is because as we move our stitches in, if I keep my decrease everywhere I have my stitch marker, then I'll have this really nice reduction, and all my decreased stitches are going to line up evenly and nicely. That's why I want to pay attention where my first peg is and all that. So go ahead and take your markers and go all the way around. So now we know that this next one is a peg 1, so to speak, and count off 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pick that up, place the marker, and move peg 7 onto peg 8. Just like that. Once you go all the way around, then you're actually going to do what it says, and you're going to knit 6. So you would knit these first ones, and then when you're going to skip that blank one and leave your yarn in the back, and then knit these 2 over 1. So you would knit those 2 together. So let me show you that now. So this is round 1. We knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Leave that yarn in the back and knit these 2 together, and then you repeat. So you're going to do that all the way around. Pause your video and come back. We're going to move the stitches inward together next. Okay, so the next round after you decrease is a round 2, which is knit. So every other round is going to be knit. There are no decreases. So before you can do that, you need to move the stitches in by 8. So on this loom, I can loosen this bolt here and then scoop my slider in by once, which reduces it by 2 on this side, and then another 2 to 4, and then I do that on the other side here. But I'm going to have to move some stitches inward in order to get it there first. So you're going to leave the ones in the middle relatively the same. You just kind of have to decide which ones you're going to do. So to make it easier, let's look first before we move. On the end, I have one that's missing here. You can see that my last stitch marker is here. I've used 8 stitch markers around on this particular size. I've got a missing one here and a missing one here. So I know I can move this over twice on this side and get these 2 empty. Okay, so I'm going to kind of mark this with my finger. These are going to go on this side. Over here, I have a missing one here and a missing one here. So if I move all my stitches down that way, I know that I have 2 that I can move down on this side. So it's these here. Okay, so these here are going to move down this way. So this empty one here and this empty one here are going to be taken care of here, and then I have an empty one here and an empty one here. So these are going to move this way. So you just kind of have to gauge and go, oh, I know that I'm going to be moving these stitches from here over down this way, okay, and I'm going to be moving these stitches down this way, but down here I'm going to be moving them towards here. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but you're going to have to kind of look at that every time you want to do it. So I'm going to start moving these stitches down, just walking them over. Okay, so I won't go over this on every round, but I can kind of point it out a little bit. So we just start moving the stitches one by one, and if it gets a little bit too much, you can kind of push that slider in and move it that way. You can also pick them up and hold them as well. And once I've moved this one, let's go ahead and pick up peg 1's stitch marker there and see that. Okay, so we're going to move that in. I've only moved this down by 1. I've got to move it down one more time. So I still have this one here. So I'm going to move this last peg here. Okay. And then I'm going to move the first peg here to this slider. All right. So now I know it's going to go all the way down to here. So now I need to move these stitches in. Okay, so I'm just going to pick them up. And when I move them over, if they have a stitch marker, I need to move them with that stitch marker. And that's important so we can see all the decreases all lined up together on the top of our crown. It's a much nicer look. All right, so I move those down. I need to move them one more, and then there's that empty peg here. So pick this up and move it down. It's a little bit tight. All right, so if it's a little bit tight, what you can do is pick them up like this, one by one, and kind of walk it down. Okay, if you're going to do that, again, remember that you may have a stitch marker. You're going to have to grab them all at the same time and make sure and not lose it. So I don't want to drop that stitch there. There we go. And just continue. Nope, it's still tight. I'm going to have to knit that stitch over again because it kind of unknit it. All right, you can see that was a little tight to work. Once I get this last one on here, I'm going to go ahead and make an adjustment. I'm going to fix this. And that belongs on here, so let's just knit that. There we go. See, I just adjusted. Okay, so I've already moved these down. Let's go ahead and make this line up correctly. And screw that on. Okay, so now you know how to do that. It's taken me a while to move those down. You're just going to start moving and walking these other stitches down here. So we know how we did it on this side. You're just going to continue doing it over here. So now that you know how to move those in, go ahead and continue moving them. You've got some extra slack, so you can go ahead and tighten up your row just a little bit and pull the slack out like that. And make sure, you know, so like this has a little bit extra here, so you might want to kind of pull on it. You know, see how once you move the stitches in, it's got a little bit extra slack, and then pull on that and get that nice and even. And then knit your round, which is the round 2. Pause your video. I'll meet you back up for round 3. See you soon. Okay, so I've reduced my stitches down, and then I did an extra round of knitting, and we're back at round 3. And instead of knitting 6 and then knitting 2 together, we're knitting 5. So you can see that rounds 3 and 5 and 7 reduce by 1 each time. It was 6, 5, 4, 3, and actually round 9 does 2, round 11 does 1, and then we knit 2 together here, and we completely eliminate the one before. So that's how all these rounds go, and then in between is a knit. And if you want to double check your stitch count afterwards, these numbers here will show you what it reduces. So once you do this part, your number will reflect this. So the main looking that you need to do is when you're moving them. So now I just knit 5 together, and I will know that because the stitch here with the stitch marker on there, you're going to put the 1 right before it. You're going to move that on top. Once you move that on top, you can see that my peg 1, that needs to be knit. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's that knit 5, and then knit 2 together. And then over here, knit 5, knit 2 together. So I'm going to pick up the second to last one and move it on top of the stitch marker, which is what we did before, and keep doing that all the way around. Okay, so we just move our stitches to decrease, then we actually work the row to decrease, then we move the stitches inward, and then we knit 1 more round. So that's all we're doing. So we knit 5 together, knit 2 together, repeat from around. I'll go ahead and show you how I've worked the stitches in, but you will see. I'm going to give you a hint as to how to move this inward. So I've got an empty peg that's going to appear here. And you see the stitch marker inside here? This one, next to it, is going to be empty, so it's going to move in. So that's what we did before. So you see how my stitch marker moved in 1 here? So I'm actually going to move my peg 1 down again and move these this way. And I'm going to look at the 2 empties on this side and move them this way so that I push keep pushing in this slider. Let's not just move it just yet. But this slider is going to move in by 2 again. Okay, 1, 2, and then it's going to move in 1, 2 here. So I'm going to pause my video and show you where it is again. And we won't spend too much more time on this, but it just keeps reducing this way. But I'm going to come back to it just so you see where mine is. All right, continue working on round 3, and then round 4 is a knit. Pause your video and I'll meet you back at round 5. See you soon. This is just after 2 rounds of decreasing, and you can start seeing how it's kind of puckering up in the back. You can see it kind of going inward like this every so often. What it's doing on the inside here, which is actually the right side, you can see the stitches are kind of leaning over that direction, and they're here as well. They are constantly leaning on top of each other in the same direction because you are putting the stitch right before on top of that stitch. If you switch them every time, then you're confusing the top of it. It won't have a really nice same leaning decrease. So you're going to go ahead and continue on round 5. You're just going to knit 4 and then knit 2 together. So moving that second to last stitch over, putting it on top, and I had moved my stitch marker in one more for peg 1, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are knit. You'll have that blank one, and then here. So you don't have to really think about it as much now. Just keep moving and reducing. Again, when you have those empty ones, you're going to move this side over 2 pegs in this way, which is 4, 2 pegs in this way over here, which gets you that 8, and it will be further reduced. Remember to get that extra knit round in between, or it's not going to have enough length in your hat. All right, go ahead and continue rounds 5, do the 6th round in between, do round 7, and then we're going to pause and stop, talk to the non-adjustable knit people, and kind of tell you where to go from here. All right. Pause your video, and I will see you soon after round 7. And I am at this placement in the pattern here, round 7. I've just completed it at 32. So right here where it's bolded, it says, if working on an adjustable loom, continue in pattern as written, which means that you would add another round 8 before you go to round 9. So you're going to knit another row. I've actually gone ahead and knit, or not a row, but a round. I've already went ahead and knit around. If you're working on a loom that's not adjustable, knit one more round, which I did, and continue to the asterisk below. So you've knit around, technically around 8, and then you go all the way down here. Through remaining stitches and draw up tightly. Basically, you're going to go around your loom and measure off enough yarn that'll go through all the stitches, and then you're going to pull it and draw it up tightly. I'll still do that on this pattern, but let's continue on for the next one. So knit around, and now we're going to knit 2 and knit 2 together, and it's the same as done before. All right, so we're going to move these on down now. And so you're going to have knit the 1, 2, knit 2 together all the way around, knit around. And then after you get to that, you're going to knit 1, knit 2 together, because you'll have this one down here. So you knit 1, and then this one and the one next to the marker is going to be knit together. So I will join you back around for round 13, and then we'll finish off at the end. Okay, so we have finished round 11 and knit one more round in between. And I have 16 stitches on this smallest size, and it is very tight. And in fact, it's really hard to get it all the way in because it's bulky in the middle, but that's okay. Our goal is to get this as small as we can, and you could never get this as that small on something like this if you don't shrink it down. And in fact, if you have one of these looms and you did most of it this way, you could probably start shrinking it down by moving it to one of these looms. It's just that you may have excess yarn. So as you've been working on this, you may have been pulling out a lot of extra slack, and having an adjustable loom like this is really nice for that. So I did knit my extra round, which would be round 12. So now all you're going to need to do is take the first peg and move it over to the second. And you can see that moving a little bit. And then take that third peg and move it over to the fourth, like that. And then knitting that together. If you have a hard time moving them at all, you can also do this. This is another little trick, which you could have done earlier on, but I really didn't want to show it to you because you can kind of get messed up on moving your stitches around too much early on. So anyway, what you can do is knit that first stitch that you want to be moving over, and then knit the next one. So let me do that over here. I'm going to work these stitches. So I'm going to move, I've already moved this stitch, so I'm going to knit this one over. So I'm wrapping and then knitting over, and then I'm just going to lift this bottom up and over the top. Okay, so if I haven't moved the stitches, what I do is I knit the stitch that I'm going to move, then I move that stitch and put it on the next stitch that I'm trying to knit together with it, and then I just lift up and over, and it's already moved. Okay, I'm going to turn my loom and do the next one. So knit it, pick it up, and move it on top of the one that's marked, and just lift up and over and knit off. Don't actually wrap it again. I'll do that again. Knit it, move it on top of the marker one, lift it up and off, and do the next one. Put it over here, and knit it over, and then knit this one and pick it up, move it over. There we go. And then the last one, knit that, whoops, there we go, and lift it off. So I've got it down to 8, and then it says break yarn, leaving a long end. So I actually don't knit another round, so I don't have to worry about moving these stitches in or anything. And then we're going to thread the end through the remaining stitches. That's what those little abbreviations are. And you always, if you've gotten lost before, you would have wanted to refer up to abbreviations up here. So we're going to thread the end through and drop tightly, fasten securely, and weave in the tail. So let's do that now. The way to get enough long tail is to go around this loom. Just, I can go in whatever direction and give a little bit extra here. I'm going to use my loom tool here. I like to pull it up from the bottom. To me, it's just easier. Do that, and I can take that loop off. Come over here, do the same. Pull that through, lift it off. Go to the next one. Whoops. Pull it through, lift it off. Just continue going around your loom and finish yours off. And then when you're coming to your last one, go on through. And then it's going to be tight on this one. So what I can do is once I get it through that last stitch, I'll just leave it where it is and then go ahead and loosen up my sliders like that. And then I can pull it through this way. Okay. So you can see that it's like a little bit pointy here. So I'm just going to kind of stretch it and pull it out like this. Kind of hand block my stitches like this. Okay. And so you can see that I've significantly reduced this crown or this top of this hat. And you can see where all the sections were, and it has this nice reduced stitch, has this little like a pinwheel pattern at the top. And so we're just going to pull those stitches tight, and it's got a really cool tailored look to it. And before you pull them all the way through, that's when you're going to thread your needle and go down inside, and we'll weave in those tails. Okay, let's just turn it inside out. And you can see it's added about 2 inches to the top here. So if you had only done part of the crown reduction, then you would have had to need that. You would have needed to add that extra inch before you started it in order for it to have enough length. All right, so I'm just going to pull it through a couple of these stitches here and leave a nice little loop here. And I'll pull that on through. And that'll secure that. And you can check it on the other side. Make sure you like how that is. There's a little bitty hole right here, so you can actually just kind of gather that up and enclose that gap. It shouldn't be too big. It may also depend on your yarn and your loom, and that kind of pull that in together. And you can pull in other stitches if you need to. But it should catch most of it. On needles, you can do this very easily, but with the loom, we've got so much extra spacing that's involved. See, that's really drawn in nicely. I think that looks really nice. And then I'm just going to go through a couple of stitches here. And then I'll cut my tail in a moment. But this is a really pretty, well, here is the decreased crown, the top on it, with the shaping on the toddler size hat. And of course I got that around some random yarn. But this is a really pretty top. I hope you enjoyed it. And subscribe, also comment down below and let us know what you'd like to see next to get patterns before the video comes out for free in your inbox as a PDF. Join the VIPs and you can get that as well. If you hit the bell icon, you will get notifications whenever we go live and also have a new video every Friday. I'd love to hear your comments. Please comment and like down below. Have a great day and happy knitting. Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.